you were at kids learning session. Last session we talked about the hard aspects of problem behavior in the social skill development series. And this third aspect of the problematic behavior in children is about the antisocial behavior or too much of aggressiveness in the children. So under this aspect, we'll start discussing and deliberate various components or various checkpoints that will help us to track the skill development in our children. And if there are any issues, if there are some problems, then we should be in a position to reverse them and make sure our children do not have any problem whatsoever while they grow up. So the very first component under this antisocial and aggressiveness is talking about a problem when a child teases or makes fun of other children. Such kind of behavior is very common in early childhood developmental time. But problem is that if we are not able to track them, if we are not able to work on them, then that will grow and become a bigger problem for the child in the future. As we know that teasing and making fun of others is a very antisocial behavioral issues. And if a child carries such behavior in the future, then the social acceptance or social inclusiveness will be a big problem for the child. So we need to understand them and we need to work on them. So now, as usual, for any caregiver or parents and teachers, important thing is that how do we know that our child is having such problematic behavior? If our child teases or child makes fun of others, sometimes we are so engrossed in daily activities, we often forget or we often neglect such kind of behavior in our child. So few things we must keep it in mind. If such symptoms, if such signs appear in our children, then we must think that if our child is doing such kind of behavior outside of the home or outside of a situation when the parents or teachers are not there. That's why let's see that what are the symptoms and signs we must look out for, which will help us to identify such behavior in our child. Number one is a very common thing, that if a child speaks very loud and irritative voice, then that shows that the child may develop such kind of behavioral issues of teasing others. So if a child is very calm, very quiet and speaks out in a very normal voice, that means that the child will not develop such kind of behavior. So research has seen that if a child talks in a very irritating and loud voice, that child may develop such kind of problematic behavior. So look out for this. If a child speaks loud, then look out for or check with other stakeholders like teachers and other neighbors that if the child is teasing others or not. Second symptoms we must look out for is that the child complains about other children or other friends quite often. Complaining is not very new for any children, but any point of time when child talks to parents or child talks to teachers, most often out of 3 or 4 things the child communicates with teachers or parents, out of that most of the things are related to complaints about others. If such thing happens, then it is more likely the child must be teasing others outside the house or when the child is around other children. Then third symptoms we must look out for is that the child will be having very less number of friends. It's very obvious. If a child teases to others, if child makes fun of others, then most of the children will not look forward to come and become friend of the child who is teasing and who is making fun of others. So very often we ask this question to our child that let me know who are your friends and who are your best friends. So if the child is not able to tell at least 50% of the children around the child, then that shows that child will be having or child has very less number of friends. When the child will be having a very less number of friends, either this may be one of the reason or any social angle may be another reason for not having sufficient friends who are around the particular child. So this is very common and we often ignore, but this is one of the major symptoms or signs which says that the child's behavior towards other children is negative. Next symptoms we must be looking around is that the child loves seeing others in trouble. So in the social cooperation, which is a positive aspect of the social skill, that shows that if others are in trouble, the child will look forward to find a solution for them and make sure others are not in that situation. But other way, even if the child is not teasing, but child is simply laughing and not taking any action by seeing somebody else is in trouble, that may be an indication child will be developing such kind of teasing behavior in future. So if we have such kind of experience with our children, make sure that child is not developing this antisocial behavior of teasing others. And finally, the other sign we'll be looking at in our children, if such things are present or not, if parents teach each other in front of the child. So this is a checkpoint for ourselves. We have to consciously check if we at home tease each other or making fun of others in a very serious note. That means we know that when child getting exposed to different experience, that becomes the reality for the child. And if the child sees that somebody at home or somebody at the proximity environment is teasing to each other, then child most likely will develop such kind of behavior, and such teasing or making fun of others will reflect in the child's very close proximity. So these are the 5 symptoms are very important for all of the parents and teachers to keep it in mind. And also while we just make a note or checkpoint of the child's social skill development, we ensure such symptoms or such signs are not present in our child. Knowing all these things now, the next question is that if at least one or few of such symptoms are present in our children, what we need to do as strategies to reverse such kind of behavior and make sure the child is not continuing with such kind of behavior or such kind of symptoms. Few things we need to check out. Number 1 is that child generally develops such kind of behavior if child doesn't receive sufficient amount of affection at home, sufficient amount of love, sufficient amount of attention either in school or in house. So it's very important that we spend time with our child. Basically, in that situation, when child is having such kind of symptoms or signs, it generally observed that when a second child is there in a house, the first child gets less attention and less affection because most of the focus is on the second child, which is a newborn child. And immediately parents can observe that such kind of antisocial behavior getting generated, and child starts behaving abnormally. Those antisocial behavior, it's because the child, whatever attention, whatever affection child used to get, suddenly there is a change in that, and child feels neglected, and child develops such kind of antisocial behavior of teasing others. So make sure we are not reducing that affection part or attention part to the child at home or at school. Second strategy we may do to make sure that our child doesn't have this antisocial behavior is that stop teasing at home or stop making fun of each other at home. So developing some kind of respect, some kind of care for others at home, that will change the mindset of the child, and child will not having any kind of thinking that it may happen outside also. So if the child is not at all exposed to such kind of behavior, then child's behavior for such will be less likely to happen. Then third thing what we can do with our child is that we simply ask that if someone does it to you, then what happens? So now it's a positive reinforcement. We'll just reinforce such kind of situation on our child by simply asking, if another child will just makes fun of you, how do you feel? So it's similar to kind of putting the child under the emotion thermometer. So making the child realize how does it feel if somebody does the same thing with the child. So this can happen by spending more time by interacting with the child. So child may think other way around, and child may start behaving in a positive way if we do that. Then always talking positive sides of others rather than discussing about negative things and shortfalls will make a way for the child to think positives about others rather than thinking about negatives. Because teasing and making fun of others will happen if we discuss the negative things of a particular child. So the negative things could be the color of the child, it could be how the child looks like, it could be how the child is talking to others. So it could be anything. So the teasing happens if child is getting exposed to the negative aspects of a particular child. Therefore, if we make sure consciously that we talk positive about all the people around, then the child will think and there will be a positive reinforcement of the positives rather than negatives. And once there are positive things about a particular child, then the child will never ever make such comments in front to the other child. So in a way, we are creating that positive reinforcement, and therefore child will definitely develop a positive aspects about others, and making fun and teasing others will fade away. So these are 4 very common strategies that we as parents or teachers may follow at home while we do this social skill development in our child. And as we know at Educated Kids that documentation is very, very important. So we need to make some kind of documentation so that such things can be tracked at any point of time. So we have to take these 4 points while we deal with this antisocial behavior of teasing. So first, the child complains about others very often. If that happens never it happens, we give a score of 1, and if very often it happens, we give a score of 3. Then the child has less number of friends. If by asking question child is unable to list out a number of friends he or she has, then we give more number of marks. If the child is unable to tell the more number of friends, if the child has more number of friends, then we give 0. That means the child doesn't have any situation where the child has less number of friends. Then the child talks loudly and carelessly. If such kind of thing happens, as we have already discussed, then that may lead to such kind of antisocial behavior of teasing others. And if a child never talks loudly or carelessly, we give a score of 0. And if the child very often talks carelessly and very loudly, roughly, then we give a score of 3. And finally, the child laughs seeing others in trouble. If it doesn't happen at all, then we give a score of 0. And most of the time, the child laughs seeing others in trouble, we give a score of 3. So more the score, more likely the child is developing such kind of antisocial behavior. And lesser the score, so the problematic behavior is less. So that's where we will be doing evaluation in our child. And if we find such kind of situation, then we may discuss with the parents, we may discuss with other stakeholders to make sure we work with our child either by adopting these 4 strategies we have already discussed. So that's all about managing a child when the child teases or makes fun of others. I hope this must be quite insightful to all the stakeholders of early child development. And here we stop this session. And the second component of this antisocial behavior or aggressiveness of the child is all about if a child is very, very aggressive physically. That means child hits, child kicks others. So if such kind of situation happens, how we are going to manage those situations, those things we'll discuss in our next session. So we'll look forward for talking to you in our next session of our Divided Kids learning session. Until then, thank you so much, and we'll look forward in our next session. Thank you so much.